All right, people are trickling in. Morning, everyone.
Good morning. I'll unmute. I'll say hi, Spencer. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. It's always whenever there's a crowd, that's it's everyone's too shy to speak up.
My audio just connected, so I will say hello too.
Well, I appreciate it. And Bex, if you want to just let me know when we have a quorum, we can go ahead and get started.
Yeah, I actually think you might be able to get started right now. We have a lot of people here.
Okay, great. Well, this will be recorded, so if there are other people on your team or other stakeholders that are interested in the Matik app for Salesforce, we'll be sending a follow-up email. That follow-up email will also include a lot of resources in terms of getting started. We'll be going relatively high level today. We really want to just use this opportunity to, one, walk through why you should be using the Matik app for Salesforce. Two, touch on the setup process. Then three, talk about the actual end user creation process. For those of you who have not met me, my name is Spencer Davison. I'm the head of technical account management over here at Matik. So if you haven't met me, then you probably met my team. We manage most of our accounts and really try to set up our customers for success. All right, let's jump into it. So why Matik and Salesforce? Well, the impetus for this idea was us wanting to make sure that the activities that salespeople or CSMs are doing today, the workflows they have today, are seamless. That's really why we created Matik in the first place, to get rid of the busy work. And Salesforce is really the first of many integrations that we have in mind, to make our workflows as seamless as possible and to really give time back to people's days. And so with Matik and Salesforce, you're never going to have to leave Salesforce to create personalized content, and that could be for prospects or customers. So when it comes to the kind of three main value props, the first is something I just touched on. So building decks from wherever your team already works. So if your team is typically in Salesforce, or what is more likely, you want your team to be in Salesforce and they're not doing enough as they should. Matik is a way for them to create content directly in there, and the content they create, a lot of that content maybe could be coming from Salesforce. Most of you who use Matik probably use an account name or a company name, an account ID as one of your inputs. Those inputs are automatically going to be input directly when you're creating that presentation, just reducing the friction again to creating content with Matik. The second one is really important when you start thinking about the value and ROI of Matik. So with Matik and Salesforce, you will have the ability to track presentations and the opportunities or accounts those presentations were generated for. So when you want to start looking at revenue attribution or outcomes, when there's Matik content created against an account or an opportunity, this will unlock that potential. And third is setup is super easy. If you have Matik set up and you have all your decks created and your dynamic ready to go, it's just 3 steps really to get up and running with Matik and Salesforce. Now, you will need some of your Salesforce admins' time, and we know their time is precious. But once you do get their time, it is relatively easy to get up and running. So let's talk about that setup process. So there's really 5 main steps to this process. The first is to install the Matik package for Salesforce. So we are part of the Salesforce apps. You can search us and you will be able to find us there. Right after that, you'll go through the setup process. The first is to connect your Matik application to Salesforce. So you're basically just going through an authorization. Takes 2 seconds. Then you're going to authorize the Matik users who should be having access to the Matik app within Salesforce. And the fourth step is where you're going to map inputs to Salesforce fields. So as you may or may not know, inputs are what the end users enter in order to tailor the presentations that are generated. And so this step is really what I was mentioning earlier. So let's say you're on an account object or let's say you're on an opportunity object and you want to create a QBR deck, and you click on the create presentation button, which I'll show in a second. The account name will automatically be filled out because it'll recognize that on that opportunity object. If you're using the opportunity field, that opportunity field will already be put out. And maybe you're using some other fields from Salesforce, like the number of licenses or the contract start date. All of those would automatically be filled out as well. That doesn't mean, though, that your data needs to be in Salesforce in order to use the Matik app in Salesforce. Your data can live anywhere. In fact, you don't have to map any of the inputs to Salesforce fields if you don't want to. You could just have the button there and just make that presentation creation process easier. So don't think that you need to have your data in Salesforce in order to use the Matik app in Salesforce. The fifth step is to add the Create Matik Presentation button to your Salesforce layout. So this is that step where your Matik admin will need to be most involved. It is very easy to add an element to a button to an object in Salesforce, but we realize that especially at larger enterprises, changing the layout of a page, might need to go through some approval process. So that is a critical element, though, because that is the button that a end user will click in order to generate the presentation. All right. So what are some of the requirements? So first, like I mentioned, you're going to need a Salesforce admin. You'll also need the Matik admin. So the Salesforce admin will be the one who's actually going to be updating the elements on the page, as well as adding the presentation object. The Matik admin will be the one who is mapping the inputs. So account name should be mapped to the account name object, or the opportunity ID should be mapped to the opportunity ID object. So the Matik admin will be doing that. Of course, you'll have to have active Matik or admin or end user seats. And lastly, you will need Salesforce Lightning. So we know some organizations haven't yet transitioned to Lightning, but that is a requirement for this. We estimate around 30 minutes of time to get this set up, give or take. Could take you as short as 5 minutes, but just to make sure you do it and you do it right. Our mantra at Matik when it comes to doing anything in Matik is testing like crazy. So we highly encourage, as part of the setup process, to make sure that after you set up that you're testing presentations, that everything's working appropriately. So let's take a preview of the Matik app in Salesforce. But before I do, like I said, we do have some really helpful resources on our help center that we'll be sending out in a follow-up email. One includes the setup process in a high level of detail, and the second includes, and this is more intended for end users, the process to actually generate presentations in Salesforce. If you do have any questions, reach out to your technical account manager, or use the chat bot that we have in the top right corner of the Matik app to reach directly out to live chat for support. But all the admins on this call should have direct access to a TAM that they can reach out to. Okay, let's dive into the app. And as we go through this, feel free to speak up and ask any questions. We know everyone's setup is going to be a little different. And so if you have any questions, they might pertain to other people on the call. So feel free to ask them as we go along. So I'm going to start with the end user side first. When I say end user, I'm going to talk, speaking about actually creating a Matik presentation. So I'm on an account page here. And what you'll notice here is that there's a brand new button on the top right here. And so this is one of those elements that a Salesforce admin would have to add to the layout for the account object. So when I click this Create Matik Presentation button, I'm going to see all the presentations that are currently available in Matik. So let's say I'm Chris here, and I'm wanted to generate a kickoff deck for Cisco. I can go ahead and click that kickoff deck. Now what's happening is it's automatically starting to read the elements that I've already mapped to this account. So in this case, I've already mapped in the Salesforce account name. It's already mapped in the rep name. And now I can put in any other elements that aren't directly mapped out. So in this case, I haven't mapped in the onboarding start date. Now that's something I could have mapped out in the inputs. I did it in this case. And same thing with goals of the program. Maybe I have those goals tracked in Salesforce, but in this case, I wanted to kind of show you an example of you don't need to have inputs mapped. You could just type this in. So in this goals of the program, I could say, to save time building presentations. And from there, I can just click generate presentation. You're probably wondering, well, what's happening to that presentation once it's generated? Well, two things are happening. One, it's going to your Google Drive just like it normally would. So, when a Matik presentation is generated, normally it goes to your Google Drive. If you're a PowerPoint organization, it'll just go to your presentations tab. Well, Google Slides presentations go to your Matik presentations tab too on the end user side. So this is the tab that I was speaking about. But in Salesforce, it actually will go to a new custom object called presentations. So here, I'll see a historic record of all the presentations created. Another really nice benefit of this is accounts often transition. You could have a new customer success manager or a new account owner or renewal manager, and they'll have a complete record of all the presentations created. So here I see that I've already created a kickoff deck. So I can go ahead and click into that. And I've got a few pieces of metadata in here. I've got when I created this deck, when it was last modified, and I'll have a direct link to that Matik presentation deck that I created. Now, if I wanted to look at all of the presentations that were currently created, I can go ahead and open up that Matik app. So the Matik app here shows you the few steps to get set up. So the presentations button will have all the presentations created. If I click now, as you can see, just like Matik, setting up presentations and generating them, it's very simple. Let's talk about the setup piece though. So the setup piece, like I mentioned, it's a 3-step process. The first thing you're gonna do is connect to your Matik instance. The way you do that is you're gonna enter a client ID and secret. That client ID and secret, some of you on the call may have done this before for other apps, Looker, Tableau, they often use this. Basically, any tool that has the ability that has an external API will have a client ID and secret. You can generate one directly in your enterprise settings, so you can just add a new client here and then just go ahead and paste those in. The second step is to authorize the user. So this is just an OAuth method. I won't click this, but when you do click authorize, it'll open up the authorization button and you'll authorize Matik to have access to your Matik account. Or sorry, Salesforce to have access to your Matik account. Sorry, did I hear someone about to speak up?
I have a couple of questions, but I'll let you finish this train of thought because it was a few minutes ago.
Sure. So I'll just talk about the last piece of setup here. So it's input mapping. Like I said, you don't need to map any inputs to create presentations in Matik. It's just making the end user's job a little easier because it's auto mapping the inputs when they say create presentations. But let's say that I did want to do that. In that case, I can find all the inputs I created. So this list of inputs here are all of the inputs that we found when you connected to Matik. So in this case, I've got an SFDC account name input. Here, I see that it's already been mapped out. So I can click the object that it's currently mapped to, and then I can click what name I want it to map to. So in this case, what I did was I just mapped it to the account name. I can have a default value if I wanted to. Obviously, it wouldn't make sense in this case to have a default value, but let's say one of your inputs was, I don't know, a percent time savings. That's a popular one for Matik. Maybe you would want a default percent time savings in there. You could have that as a default value. You could also allow the end user to override the input in case the Salesforce data could be wrong. I'm sure everyone has experienced Salesforce data sometimes being wrong. So if that were to be the case and an input was mapped to a field, you could give the end users the ability to just go ahead and override it. After that, you can just go ahead and click save, and you're off and running. So sorry, yeah, you had a question. Happy to go ahead and answer it now.
Yeah. So if you could go back to where it was on the related object.
Mm-hmm.
One of my questions was a user who's not a Matik user. So we've got a lot of our executive sponsors in Salesforce. Will they be able to go in and take a look at these decks without needing to be Matik users?
Yeah, they will.
Okay.
I'm 99% sure. Mac, are you on this call by chance?
Yes, I am. They will, provided that they have access to the Google Drive that Matik defaults puts the presentation in.
Okay, cool. And that was actually just another, it's never been necessary up till now, but with the default folder that you guys put those presentations in, we need to make changes to our Google Drive settings to make sure that like anything that's created out of Matik is sort of available to a whole user set instead of just like a private folder.
I see. So yeah, that is the situation today where you would need to have access to a folder in order to have access to the presentation.
Okay, cool. And then I don't know, it looked like it's not available today, but is it on the roadmap to also bring in the functionality where someone can add slides from libraries within the presentation?
So if you've created a subtemplate in Matik, that will show up.
Okay.
So subtemplates will show up in here. You won't be able to like cross-pollinate slides
or like deselect them.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, of course, this is a V1.
Right.
Our idea is to have complete parity with what you see in Matik and what you see in Salesforce in the future. But we love that feedback. And in fact, for those of you that don't know, we do have a feedback portal in Product Board. We love hearing feedback directly from users. We'll actually include this link in the follow-up email. And we'll create and you can just basically comment on the native Salesforce app, anything that you'd like to see. I'm sure you'll have a lot more ideas once you actually do get integrated with it.
No, yeah, this is great. Thank you so much.
The last thing I will show you is the part of the app where you can actually generate reports. So if I wanted to create a new report, I can actually create a report based on presentations. So if I look for, actually, I'm going to go to all here. And if I go to my presentations, I can look at activities with presentations. Now, this is just a standard report type, but I can basically create any report I wanted to, and that has the presentations object, and it should show. So basically, if I wanted to look at accounts with presentations or opportunities, anything like that, that would show up in here. Right now, I've got a few filters on here, so it's not going to show up, but you can now use that presentations object to create any custom reports. This is particularly helpful for leadership conversations. And you know, I've worked with customers before, and we've done some cool stuff where we look at attribution, and we look at the uplift of win rates with Matik, or the reduction in churn with Matik, deal size changes with Matik content. With Matik and Salesforce, that's just going to make those sort of analysis even easier. So wanted to kind of quickly just mention that. But that's basically it. So I want to leave some time for some Q&A. Does anybody have any questions? Any questions in the chat? Feel free to post them there if you do have any.
I had a quick question, Spencer.
Yeah.
I was curious just to understand, like for the button that's there, kind of slightly related to the previous question. Like we'll have a lot of folks who don't necessarily have Matik access in Salesforce. If you are not if you don't currently have like a seat or an automatic user,
Yeah.
like will that button still show up, or will it only be showing up for folks who have a license? Like, what does that experience look like?
Great question. My understanding is that it will not show up. So Mac Briscoe is our guru on this, which is why I've added him in the call. Mac, would you happen to know the answer to that question?
Sorry, what was the question again?
Would the create presentation button show up for non-Matic users?
I believe it would still show up if you have them in the same user set for that specific Salesforce layout, which you're adding the button to. However, when Matik popped up and they clicked on that, it wouldn't be able to, Matik wouldn't operate because their Salesforce isn't connected to Matik.
Got it. Okay.
Got it. So it does sound like, though, if they created another set of non-Matic users, then that button wouldn't show up for that layout.
Exactly. So like if you had
Okay.
a situation where you wanted to have Salesforce or have the Matik app for Salesforce for only certain users, I would just create a separate Salesforce layout for the user group that is using Matik and then add the button into that layout specifically.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. Thank you, Mac. And Katie, to answer your question, it does still work with PowerPoint, except it would be a file download rather than a link to Google Drive. Not sure if Katie's still on, but just responding to the meeting chat there. Great. Any other questions?
I was just double checking. Does the presentations that show up when they click that button mirror what has been shared with them in Matik?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So if they don't have access to a certain presentation, they wouldn't have access to that presentation when they click into the button.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for your time. Like I said, we'll follow up with a recording of this webinar, and we will also follow up with some helpful resources. We look forward to your feedback. When it comes to the integration process, we don't want you to go about this alone. So please reach out to your TAM and we'll make time to walk you through it. We want to make sure that it's as seamless as possible for you, especially for these V1 features. We don't want you to go about it alone. So please do reach out. Great. Well, thank you all for your time. I really appreciate it, and have a wonderful Thursday. Bye all.